everybody. This is the ARPA committee, and we're here today to talk about the American Recovery Act funds, and we're going to start the meeting with Robert Hewitt talking about Farmdale Sanitation District and the funds there. So I'm going to leave the meeting, and I'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so the first item is going to be the Farmdale Sanitation District Phase 1 project, which is a pump station located on their property that they purchased from the Dailies down the southwest quadrant west of US 127. Also includes a 2 million gallon wet weather storage tank, force main from that pump station to the city of Frankfurt's new trail pump station, and then various interceptor lines from the existing package plants in the Coolbrook, Farmgate, Farmdale, Edgewood, and 2 other plants. So it'll be a total of 6 plants that will go to this pump station. I've received updated pricing from H&B Engineers, who's the design engineer on this project. These are estimates dated April, along with construction, engineering, environmental administration, easement acquisition, and the like. The estimated project cost is $12 million. There has been a request through Congressman Barr's office for some assistance in funding, and that request is still pending through that committee. I have a breakdown of all the individual plant costs. If anyone would like to see it, I could email that out. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Scarborough.
I would like to know what is going to happen to the land that we bought from the Dailies for the erstwhile treatment plant.
So that property, the district will still own it, and that is going to be the location of this new pump station and the 2 million gallon wet weather storage tank.
Thank you. And
What are they asking Bar for?
As much as they can get, as much as they can get. This project is in the WRIS portal for wastewater funding through KIA. So Farmdale is prepared to request all funding types, CDBG, rural development, KIA loan, anything that they can acquire. The whole intent is to attempt to avoid any increase in the customer's monthly rate, or to minimize any increase as much as possible.
Sure.
So as part of the agreement with the city has requested Farmdale pay for the percentage increase in the construction cost of the pump station based on the capacity that Farmdale has requested. And that total is 2.3 million. And so there's a request to use ARPA funds to pay that portion of the agreement, so that that will not be transferred over to the customers. And then there's the additional 12 million for the project for construction. The agreement with the city, as proposed right now with Farmdale, does have a cost per gallon that Farmdale would pay the city. However, everyone currently a customer of the Farmdale Sanitation District will remain a customer of the Farmdale Sanitation District, and the Sanitation District will be a customer of the City of Frankfurt Sewer Department. So all of this construction would remain in the name of Farmdale Sanitation District.
Hello, Ann.
Hello.
Do you have any information you want to add to what Robert provided?
I missed the beginning of his discussion. Unfortunately, I tried to join Zoom and my computer screen went black, so I had to jump on another computer. But the thing that I would mention is the discussion that we've had about Robert just covered what would be the state ARPA funds. What we had discovered about discussed about a placeholder for our own ARPA funds. I feel it's still important to leave that in place because if we should receive a congressional appropriation, we would have to provide a 20% local match. And also if we had to supplement with other funding sources, many of those would come with the need for a local match. So I think it's important to leave the amount that we had discussed at our last meeting in place, mentioned for Farmdale, to cover those types of expenses because we don't know as of yet what those are going to be.
And for the committee's benefit, you had a meeting with representatives from Barr's office yesterday for funding. Could you mention that to them as much as you can?
Yes, they have been very responsive and have gotten back to me several times since our application to ask additional questions. The indication I'm getting now is that they would like to fund this project, but that they won't be able to fund it at the level that we had requested. And so we still don't know what that lower funding might look like and how much our local match would be. That's why I'm saying that we probably would need to explore additional funding sources in order to be able to complete the project. And so the need for leaving those funds in place for additional local match with other types of grants and funding sources would be necessary.
So, Ann, is it fair to say that what we may receive from the list that we've submitted to Barr would be less than half of this $12 million?
Yes, I would think that that's realistic, that it would be less than that.
And I did mention that the district is prepared to request funding from CDBG, rural development, KIA loan, just all funding opportunities that are available to them.
Absolutely. And of course, this, while our hopes for the congressional appropriation were very high, this at least gets us ahead of where we would have been if we received money from Congress. So that would mean less amount that would have to be funded by other grant sources and probably by a low interest loan through the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. And so this would still hopefully be able to keep those rates at a affordable amount for those residents in Farmdale.
Good.
Does anybody have any questions?
And how long have we been working on Farmdale?
I've been on Farmdale for 14 years since I started with the county. And I know it's been going on a little longer than that.
What's the time frame on Barr's money? Do we know?
We're not certain, but I got an indication yesterday that they would hopefully be letting us know something soon. They may actually wait until the beginning of the federal fiscal year to announce, which would be October 1st, but hopefully that we could get some kind of indication before that point what they were considering.
And just let this committee know, I believe, and Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, at the last update we received from HMB, I think they were roughly 30% in the design process. Does that sound correct?
You've probably had more discussions with them than I have about that. I know that they felt positive that they could move quickly with the rest of the design.
So the board did formally authorize HMB to proceed with design.
Yes,
several
they
meetings.
have. Several meetings ago, yes. And of course, they're using that first appropriation or part of that first appropriation to pay for the design work at this time. So, they still do have some funds to work with that they're continuing to use to proceed further with that design part.
And that's the EPA grant? Is that
Yes,
correct?
that original EPA that was split, and part of it is being used for the design work for the interceptor system. And part of it they've been using to make corrections to those collector systems, such as the Coolbrook project that I believe has either just been finished or is nearing completion at this point. So they've done a lot with that first appropriation toward improving the collection systems in the Farmdale area. And that will only be a great benefit to this interceptor project when we can proceed with construction on that. It'll get all that, a lot of that I&I out of the systems, and has made a lot of repairs. So hopefully the residents out there are already seeing some improvements.
Any questions from the committee?
Not on this.
Squire Booth, did you have any additional questions? It's part of your area.
Yes, I was interested in the Coolbrook section. And I understand from Ann that work on the collector system has been finished. Am I correct in assuming that?
Robert would know better about that than I am. He's more in touch with the day-to-day. I said, from my point, I think it's either finished or nearing completion. So he would know more details about that.
Squire Booth, the original scope of work has been completed. There were some extra funds available. So now the contractor is going out and doing extra work so we can spend all that money. So that's great news.
Yes, that is great news.
All right. I'm sorry.
You want to move on to the broadband?
Sure. All right. Everyone okay to go over to the broadband project since we still have Ann with us?
Yes.
All right. And I'll start out on the front end, and I'll let you discuss the proposal. So staff issued out a request for proposals advertised in the local newspaper and on our county website. We received 2 submittals, one from Spectrum and one from Lit Communities. Those proposals
How do you
are
spell that?
LIT.
LIT?
Yes, LIT. Those proposals are currently being reviewed by staff. Interviews of both firms have been scheduled for next week. Ann, you want to talk about the proposals at all?
No, at this point, I think, we're still reviewing the content and have a lot of questions to ask both firms. Our interviews are Tuesday and Wednesday, and we've scheduled an hour and a half for each one. So hopefully we will have much more information to bring back to you after those interviews.
I guess one thing that's important to note that these proposals are not for construction. It's for the feasibility of providing service throughout the county. Okay.
It's to put a plan. I should not be asking questions.
No, go ahead, please do.
It's to put a plan together.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So the state has done some of the research as far as coverage areas, and they put out a survey. Is that survey still open?
It is, to my knowledge. And so people can go do a speed test on their cell phone, and then that is uploaded into the state's mapping system. And that way the state knows where areas that aren't covered are specifically located. So citizens are encouraged to do that.
And this, so the broadband project is specifically for unserved areas and underserved areas with less than 100 meg.
100 meg, I believe. Is that right, Ann?
Yes, that's the goal the Treasury is setting, because right now I believe the FCC, the goal is lower. to suggest that an area has internet, but our broadband, but the Treasury's requirements are coming out to suggest the 100 meg because they know that the need for this service is only going to continue to grow with education and healthcare and economic development, all those sectors needing this type of service for every household. So they know that that's going to continue to grow, the demand's going to continue to grow, and they want us to build in capacity for future growth.
In terms of funding for this study, Ann, can you elaborate about the state's contribution and then Franklin County's portion of it?
I think that the state is still formulating how they're going to allocate. They have not put forth a list of county allocations the way that some of the other areas for ARPA funding have been set up, such as the water projects and sewer projects. But I believe the state's goal is to subsidize county projects, and at what I had read was up to a rate of 50%, but I'm not sure that that's still correct. Of course, they have a finite amount of ARPA funds as well, but I know that the office has been set up through the governor's office to work with counties and their broadband projects. So this feasibility study is something that was suggested that would be a good start by our area development district. And so this will give us information on what infrastructure and what providers and a lot of other information are available in Franklin County, and give us a good direction and possibly a phased approach to how we can go about implementing a project on broadband.
So these ARPA funds can be used for both this study as well as construction?
Yes.
At our last meeting, the committee approved to set aside $1 million for this project.
Yes, I believe that like some of the other amounts that we've set aside, I believe those are placeholders, because I know that any of these areas is going to require probably much more in the way of funding than we know at this point. For example, some communities that I've been researching, some of their approaches to providing broadband to everyone, can reach up into the millions. So this gives us a place to start and gets us further along the road than we would have been without these funds. So I think it's prudent to be patient and learn as we go and make the right decisions at each step of the way.
That's a very good statement. You should be a politician.
Oh, thank you. No, I just work for them.
I'd vote for you, Ann.
Maybe mayor of Williamstown in my retirement years.
The state was going to match that $1 million. Am I correct in that?
I believe that they're going to attempt to provide some matching money for whatever we decide to spend on a broadband project. And of course, like I said, they have a finite amount of funds as well. So I don't know if they will be able to match 50% depending on what we decide to spend, but I'm sure that they are willing to work with us to help us develop a project and provide whatever funding they can. There are also some other federal sources that we can definitely look into through some of the directly through the federal agencies, that once we have a good plan in place, that we can start investigating where more funding could come from to help us achieve that goal.
Okay.
And I don't recall, did the proposals identify how much time they'll need to complete their study?
I believe one proposal mentioned a 60-day timeline, which is fairly ambitious and would be great. The other, I think, was several months, but that would be questions we would need to ask them based on the scope that we might decide to agree upon.
And so would the broadband construction be subject to the same timeline of spending the ARPA funds as the water and sewer?
Yes, it would. Whatever project or whatever phase we decide to try to complete with ARPA funds would have to be obligated by the end of calendar year 2024 and spent by the end of calendar year 2026.
So then, once the study's completed, then we would prepare specifications and a bid advertisement for construction.
That's correct.
Okay. And in your opinion, would that show, well, that'd show us on the way, but it wouldn't be a full commitment, would it? Or
Well,
commitment?
no, I think a next step could be, which some communities have done, is to issue an RFP for providers for that project and let some broadband providers submit proposals on what they're willing to invest if we chose them to work on phases of construction for our broadband goals. So, for example, Boone County issued an RFP for providers that were interested in participating in their project, providing internet to each household in Boone County. And I believe that they chose and entered into a contract with Cincinnati Bell. So there are different ways of approaching that, and getting a provider to put some investment into a system as well is a great way to consider approaching broadband availability.
That is a new way of proposal, asking for investment. That I had never heard of that before.
Well, it'd be something along the lines of a provider might say, if they were chosen, they would be willing to create a scaled price for different households that would, give a basic service for a lesser amount to county residents who would choose that. So there could be all different kinds of ways in what they might propose to invest, from infrastructure to rates to, whatever kind of benefits that they could provide to the project. So that might be a big part of why we would choose a certain provider.
And did Boone County enter into a franchise agreement with the provider?
They are entered into a contract. I haven't read the details of that contract, although Judge Gary Morris provided us with copies of both the RFP and their contract just for our information in case we decide we would like to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
You got some barbecue sauce on your shirt?
Hey, don't let Lambert leave. I got him a free lunch.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Hey, Lambert, I worked hard for this free lunch for you, buddy. So where are you in the conversation?
You want to tell them?
So we have discussed the Farmdale Sanitation District update there. We are now discussing the Broadband Project bids and that process, the funding.
Okay. All right. I'm listening. I'll let Ann lead that, and just holler at me if you have a question or something. I'm on my way.
I think that's about all I have on that. Unless anyone has additional questions, I'll sure try to answer. But right now, I think we need to speak to these two firms and get some more information.
Oh, okay. You're at that point.
Yes.
I got an email asking for my participation in a speed test several months ago. And I don't know what that was connected with. I thought it was Kentucky, but maybe not.
Yes, that's the state's effort to try and help provide information to counties on where their areas might be of unserved or underserved residents. And that's still open, so that's still continuing to gather information and provides mapping, just pretty general mapping, but at least a start in knowing where your areas are of concern.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So are we ready to go into the premium pay?
Do we want to talk about water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Water. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll start off.
Indoor plumbing.
Go ahead.
I've been talking to North Shelby about extending their water main under the railroad there at Bridgeport, Benson, and Corman's Railroad. And they have not got back with me at the price yet. I talked to him again this morning, and he says the engineer's not gotten out there yet. They're overwhelmed with building houses. Putting in water services for that.
For new construction.
So that should be coming.
Who will that service land? Just out of question.
About 3 houses, 2 to 3 houses that don't have water.
They're on well.
They haul their water, haul their own, because nobody in Franklin County hauls water anymore.
Okay.
So Franklin County is served by 5 water districts and then 1 municipal water, which of course we know is the plant board. So Judge Wells had mentioned yesterday about the funding being available to systems that directly serve Franklin County residents. So even though US 60 and North Shelby water districts are located in another county, they still have customers in Franklin County. Is that correct, Judge Wells, that if they were to extend their system to serve more Franklin County residents, that they would be eligible for some of this funding?
They would be eligible as long as it's a Franklin County project. We would not, it would not be eligible if it is a Shelby County or project. It has to be a Franklin County, serve Franklin County residents.
So Ann, under some of these, they've asked that cities and counties partner together for projects. Would that be the same as adjoining counties to partner on projects?
I think that's referring to the state cleaner water funding, which is the state's ARPA funds. And that is for local governments within a county to agree on projects, is what my understanding is.
Yeah, and so Lambert and Marty and Ann will attest to this. Just like everything else, there seems to be 2 or 3 other pots of money that are out there, i.e. state, KIA or whatever. And so those monies will also be available for water districts for projects as well. And so it's still unclear how all of that will come into place, so let's take your project, Lambert, to extend a water main. Now, it could be, and this is the way we think it will go, but we don't know for sure. It could be that North Shelby could apply to Franklin County for a $30,000 grant to extend that. Then they could apply to the state infrastructure or KIA and get a $60,000 grant to do it as well. But as far as I know and everything I've heard, I'm still not quite sure how all that's going to play out on the different entities and towards one project.
Yeah, I think they're still building that framework, and there are folks that we can call and talk to once we have a firm idea of some project proposals.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the way we're looking at it.
And do we have a handle on unserved customers in Franklin County?
We had done some studies on that a number of years ago, and of course the issues with those unserved households, it was a geographical and a financially feasible reason that those households hadn't been served. So I haven't heard an update on that number in quite a while.
Some of them just live so far off the line. The line's on their property, but it would cost them a fortune to get it to their house.
And that would be the customer's responsibility for the cost. Is there, I guess, are there funding opportunities or grant opportunities for residences that would have to bear that cost to assist them with connecting?
That could sure be a question that we could pose to KIA to see if grants to residents would be considered a project. I don't really know.
You know, what I think we really ought to do as a committee is look at the entire water mapping network for Franklin County, try to identify those who don't have service, and then try to connect the points, you know, because like the example you gave, if for some reason we could run a main through their property and loop it to another water line, say on the backside of the property, that would help the water district and make a shorter lateral run for the home. Because I know
Robert, I talked with Farmdale and Elkhorn about that and they're kind of thinking that those projects are more on the property owners not really wanting to be on it. So I don't know whether that's feasible. That's a lot of money. I don't know whether that's the best use of money or not. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying that, that it's quite expensive to go that route when they're not really pushing for it themselves. That's what I got from the water districts, a couple of the water districts. I will say this, Lambert and Marty, it is my wish, and it's only a wish because I think it's so helpful to the residents, and it could reduce their insurance rates, is that any projects that are being considered, if they would include fire hydrants, if they are needed, would, I think, enhance the project. Because I really do think we as the county government need to make sure that we get fire protection to the best we can, as many places that there are that have residents, more than one house or two or three houses close by, that a fire hydrant would be helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Judge, but the ones I'm talking about is only a 4-inch line. You can't put a hydrant on it. But that's the situation in a lot of my districts.
Yeah, and so that's where the water districts, if they were to say that we're going to expand the line and put hydrants in, I think that goes a lot further than just expanding the line, because hydrants should be part of any expansion, my fault anyway.
Sure.
I agree.
So, well, this is still a process. Unfortunately, the fortunate thing is where there's lots of money. The unfortunate thing is there's not a lot of guidance yet. So I guess we're going to have to deal with that and continue to talk about it and set up a mechanism. And I'd like for you to talk with the board about a mechanism, a way to look at, especially when it comes to water projects, evaluate them, and then turn around and appropriate grant monies towards them. Do you have an idea on that? Because I think that's going to be important down the road here.
Yes, I think that an application, that we can develop an application for an initial proposal. And of course, I'm sure that we will need to collect a lot more information after receiving those. And then based on the guidance that is available on the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority website, because any of our water or sewer projects has to be eligible to go on that state revolving fund list. It doesn't have to necessarily be on that list at this time, but it has to meet those requirements of eligibility that the state uses for their own revolving fund list of priority projects. So I think that an initial application and then follow up, and then considering the number of, based on what Treasury's guidance is, unserved or underserved the potential for the benefit to the largest number of households. I think a lot of those things will be key in determining where we want to place those grant funds. And I know 500,000 as a placeholder, sounds like a good amount of money, but when we start talking about a large water, sewer, any other type of project, that's kind of what I see it as, a placeholder, because I feel like a lot of these projects could require more than that. It could require the entire amount and more just to achieve a single project. So that'll be the kind of thing that we need to look at as we start to receive those proposals and evaluate them for where we think the largest benefit to the community can be.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that's definitely something that we're going to have to consider, because we've already gotten I think we've gotten a proposal from Elkhorn Water District for 550,000. Maybe it's Peaks Mill, but one of those water districts for a water project they want us to pay for. So anyway, okay. If you all continue talking, I'm going to cut off. I'm here in the parking lot, and I'll be right in the office. 1 second. Give me 1 second. Thank you.
We don't have room for you, Judge.
I'm gonna go jump on my. I'm gonna go jump on my computer. Have his seat.
You can see it around.
Okay. Yep.
It's supposed to be brains. It's supposed to be brains.
So Ann, you will be working on some type of grant application process for our districts to apply for our county's ARPA funds.
Yes, I will work, and I'll lean heavily on both Robert and Susan to come up with an application. And then what we'll also need, once we do decide on some projects, we will need an agreement document, a legal agreement document, to make sure that whoever we're passing these grant funds to also follows all the requirements set forth by Department of Treasury. So we'll have several documents being prepared for these types of projects.
So it's my understanding, when we award grant funding, we will need to set up that agreement to try to ensure that they are using the funds for what they were allocated for. However, we are responsible.
Yes,
to ensure that actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
And we will, because of the amounts, it triggers an audit. So they will audit those districts, correct? To ensure that the funds were used properly.
I'm not sure if they will audit the districts, but our audit will definitely include the documentation that we've gathered from those projects.
Okay.
So yeah, and those more extensive audits can also be paid for with ARPA funds.
Okay. Okay. So we will need to ensure that we have the documentation on our side to show that those projects were.
Yes, and we'll have to decide whether or not that is the amounts obligated will be placed with those like the SPGEs initially, or whether we want to set up a drawdown with milestones to be reached. You know, we'll have to decide what type of framework we want to create for those grants.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions on water? No, on water. Okay. Let's go to premium pay then. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Okay. So Betty, or you want Susan to start?
We'll let Susan start.
We'll let Susan start.
Mhm.
Okay, Susan. All right. Well, let me start.
Yeah,
Let me start and say this to Marty and Lambert. The last time we met, we looked at first responders. And Lambert, Marty and Lambert, were you all at the conference last week? Well, you heard at the conference, we had gotten information right before the conference that all county employees are called essential workers, and they're eligible for this money. And we were not sure that was the case, but it is
They
now.
work from home.
Yes, exactly. So we've really done an extensive look at this, and I'm going to let Betty and Susan talk about the framework, but we've come up with a plan that between a window, and we'll talk about what that window is, but between a window, all employees could receive a benefit from this premium package. First response.
Most employees.
Well, okay, yeah, you're right, and you'll talk about that. But we made a subcategory of essential workers and called them public safety workers, and those go back to what we originally had talked about as first responders. So we're calling them public safety workers at that point. So there's a differentiation between that group and essential workers, but we're going to
Non-public.
non-public. Thank you. All right, the verbiage I'm working on. So I'm being corrected. But anyway, so with that being said, Betty and Susan, I'll let you go from there. And and Betty, if you would you should probably just talk about what qualifies somebody.
Okay,
Would you do that?
yes. You want the amounts too, or you want to?
Well, do the qualifications first,
Okay.
and then we'll do the
The
amount.
qualifications would be anyone that worked from 7/1/2020 to 12/31/2020 and is still a current employee. The reason we chose that time frame is because if you remember during that time, that was the highest peak that this virus was hitting, and we had no vaccines during those times. That was our highest number, was between those 6 months. Okay. So, and that's why we chose that time period based upon like the highest peak, and there was no vaccine that was available at that time. And also the reason we chose to current employees with some legal guidance, basically it's a way to incentivize continued, good work during the pandemic. If you're continuing, we because you're still here, you fought our way through the pandemic, and it's just giving the employees an incentive.
Well, some of it, another piece of that was where the issues that really came up was if you retired.
Correct, that's
and,
another. Thank
it
you.
would mess up your retirement if you got this money back. So it's going to be that kind. It's going to be an ugly issue.
It was,
It's going to take a lot of work to get through if we started paying it to people that already had left.
correct. And that, and these, if the court decides to do this, these will be direct deposit. We don't know if those ex-employees has got the same direct deposit. It's not only a reporting nightmare, but it's, this is a way to incentivize the employees that have stuck it out.
Mhm.
They're still working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you want to go through the pay?
And here's the pay, what we come up with. Susan, correct me if I'm wrong. Susan's our number person. We looked at the median average of like the firefighters. The firefighters works the most hours because they have mandatory overtime. Okay. So we took the highest, we took the median of those hours. And we come up with $2,600 for safety employees. Okay. And again, that is the median of the hours worked during that 6 months of 7/1/2020 to 12/31/2020. We was looking at it, I'm gonna go back a little, when we talked about the $1 on the hour or $2 on the hour, that just wasn't gonna work. To do it on physically hours worked, period, it wasn't gonna work. That's how we still came back with $2,600, okay? for full-time public safety workers. For part-time public safety workers, because they was working, the part-time public safety was working. And we had our part-time coroners working. So we took half of that. So we put a $1,300 value on that. Okay. Now going down to the non-public safety workers, we did have,
Essential ones.
well,
Yeah. right.
yes, correct. We took 1,300. That is half of 2,600 because those part-time people worked half during that time.
And we figured out, and this is really helpful to them because if you take half of 1,900, half a year times 1,950, and you take half of that's 975.
Correct.
And you give them $1, they would have gotten 975. But we moved it to 1,300 because it's easier to do and it's easier to explain. We took half of the 2,600 and paying them a one-time check of $1,300.
Correct. So getting to the, so 1,300 would be the full-time non-safety employees that worked during that period and still employed and that did not telework. The part-time employees that worked during that time period, we took half of that. That's 650. So they worked half of the time. So we thought it would be fair because they had the same exposure as our full-time employees. You know, we had people out there cleaning the, cleaning the golf carts. We had our people cleaning the restrooms. We took half of 13 for 650. Also, anyone that started, we did do prorates. Okay. So if someone started in August last year
Or October,
we prorated that. And we divided the amounts by the 2,600 or 1,300 and so forth. So we have prorated that. You know, we don't want to give someone $2,600 and they only work 2 months. So we really looked over this, the deputy judge, myself, Susan Lawrenson, and we really put in some subcategories, some sectors.
So Bejo,
Yes, ma'am.
this pertains to their employment status during July 1st through December 31st, 2020. So if someone was part-time during that period and has filled a full-time position, they would receive the part-time pay because that is what the work they were performing at that time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
it's only the work performed July 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020. But in order to be eligible, the other piece of it is you have to be employed today.
Correct.
Yes, and also, one of the reasons we came up with it, there was some pretty good training last week that Tamer and a couple other employees and some illegal.
Lambert was there.
Okay, some of the legal advice that we have here. I mean, I'm going to read it. Okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you are not looking to give premium pay to an employee no longer working for you. Therefore, utilizing these funds as an incentive to continue good work during the Commonwealth Emergency Declaration may be a safety net.
And that's Rich Ornstein's? Is that Rich
Suggestion.
Ornstein?
Yes, this is all, NACO too, and yes. Did I answer everything you?
What, so,
Susan?
Jeff, you want to go first?
You
Your
want to go with
thoughts?
okay,
Oh, we did the money. Oh, you want to do the total amount?
yeah,
Go ahead
I
and do the
think so.
total amount.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
finish
yeah.
that. and
I'm
then-
sorry. Yeah, I think that's a
Okay,
good idea.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Y'all,
Susan.
did the committee receive?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so first of all, this is based on positions and it will be based on the point in time that the court makes the decision to approve it. So if there's some slight change in employment for the current employee, the current employment factor, then there might be a slight change, but I think this is a good number of $385,000 for the premium pay. The pay will be subject to retirement, which is one of the reasons we are very careful of assigning this to work performed and work periods performed. Because for reporting requirements, we'll have to, it will be subject to retirement withholdings as well as the retirement portion from the county. And so those benefit costs on top of that, probably another 100,000. So it's about a $500,000 project. And the way it's constructed is to be from ARPA funding, federal funding.
Took the names off, that the titles on the sheet.
Correct.
Everybody's got the sheet.
Because like Susan said with the KRS, this is credible comp. This will be reported to Kentucky Retirement as a lump sum credible comp.
And Betty, you came up with a tremendous idea, you and Susan together, to help the employees, and that is how the taxes would be taken out of this.
Yes, what we can do, if the court approves this, basically, we're going to do a new pay run. And so by doing that, we can do a spread the taxes semi-annually because where it's a lump sum. So it won't tax like $2,600 at $2,600. It's a way to where it'd be less taxes taken out, and it would help.
Yeah.
It would help
Yeah.
to get a little bit more money for their hard work that we faced during the pandemic. So yes, we can do that, and hopefully, if the court approves it, we will do that.
Now, all of these monies, and Susan, this is for Squire Moore and Squire Booth. All of these monies that we're talking about here are ARPA monies. So in addition to all employees that are not under the sheriff's office or under the clerk's office, will be getting a 2% cost of living raise starting July 1st as well. Jeff's office and the sheriff's office are already getting that through to your next budget. And then you'll get it the next budget. You're already getting it. That's so.
They get theirs in January.
Yeah.
Just because we're on different years.
That's
You're
fine.
on-
Well,
you're on account. or
what I'm meaning for them to understand is that there still is a cost of living coming in as well. It starts July 1st for another group of people.
You good with this, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll say this, I sent these letters in to you, and I sent them in so you could understand where the clerk's office stood on the ARPA premium money. And I know everything came down, just happened so quick, and then everybody's trying to figure out that, you know, if you can't find an essential employee on this page, then you need to get rid of them because they're all essential. They're all county employees, and they all, everybody's needed in this county. And they do a nice job. The employees in the county do a nice job. I think that it would probably be beneficial so the documentation is there. I mean, you got the sheriff, you got the judge's office, you got the cap. You might get a letter or dissertation from all of them on what they've done through this period of time. So your magistrates can see what they've done and what we put up with in the elections. And we saw 26,450 people in person do an election. We see more people on an everyday basis, but all the employees had strokes, every single one of them. I think it's a great step on y'all's behalf.
Okay. Mark, Squire Booth, do you have any comments?
Well, yes, I think that the total on the email that Deputy Judge sent me is about what we thought it would cost out of the ARPA funds. So I think that we are prepared for that, and those employees deserve it for coming to work. I mean, sometimes it's hard, and especially if you think that you might be exposing yourself to a deadly disease, it's definitely worth it.
Anyone else?
What's worth it is giving them the premium pay. I mean,
You're good with it?
Thank you, Marty. We really appreciate this.
I really think the
Thank you,
employees of
Lambert.
Franklin County will appreciate this.
And this is exactly what one of the things that these fundings are for, set aside for, are for employees.
Anybody else? Madonna, you got anything to say? You're quiet.
Just listen. No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Robert, as a department head,
Oh, I think it's a great thing, and I know the employees will appreciate it. It'd be very generous if the court agreed to this, and thank you to the committee for entertaining this idea, this concept. Thank you, Judge, and all the work that everyone put in on this. It'll put a smile on the faces of those employees and their families, because I know that a lot of them had a very tough time during the pandemic, extremely tough time. And hopefully this will smooth that out for them just a little bit. So thank you.
I think that's well said, Robert. Thank you for saying that. It has been tough, and this is a small, in my opinion, it's good money, but it's also a small thank you for the big job that they did during this whole time. What they had to go through, what our employees faced. It is a way to say thank you. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of all of our employees. I'm proud of every office, every constitutional officer, and the people that worked and had to endure the headaches and the issues that would come up. Jeff, I can't. We couldn't count the number of issues on our hands and our feet that came up out of your office and out of the jail and out of the fire department and sheriff's office and all of those other offices. So I really do want to say thank you to all the employees as well. And this is a great means to say thank you to them. Anybody else? Any other questions? So the question I have, and I posted to Timber, I don't know as well, is this amenable? Can it be on for the 30th, or do you want to recommend that it goes in July?
I think we can do this by resolution if the committee is okay, and I feel confident I can pull this together for the June 30th agenda, if that is the committee's wish.
And then Betty, the checks would go out.
We'll work on that. But there's some things that I don't want to say
Yeah.
just because we've got to do some programming, and they will be out as soon as we can get those out.
Okay.
And because this is a use of the ARPA funds, the court will be required to vote on this funding mechanism, this part of our allotment for disbursement. And I do appreciate Betty Jo and Susan taking the time to divide these out and making sure that our part-time employees were included. Some of our part-time employees were here working through the pandemic when others were our full-time employees were able to telework and they could not. And we hired part-time employees to do the sanitizing. And that was very important to the health of our community and our employees. And so I'm very appreciative that our part-time employees are included in this pay.
And for the committee, I would just make the comment that I think that this will be seen as a good demonstration that we're using funds early on, even though we are being patient and prudent and practical in our decision-making process for how we're going to use the ARPA funds. We'll have a reporting period of, I believe it's in August, isn't that right? And our first reporting period is in August.
Yes, that's correct.
So this will show a demonstration of the use of the ARPA money and that it's needed. That was one of the things with the CARES funds, people held on to them or they didn't use them. And so those powers that be that were putting the money out there was like, well, you don't really need the money anyway. They get that kind of feeling. So when you start getting some feedback that the funds are being used and that there wasn't an unmet need, for helping to boost, helping to boost up people that were exposed. And I think that shows that will be seen as a good reportable number when they start evaluating federal money use.
And I'm not trying to throw any wrenches in anything, but we are a fee office and so is the sheriff. So you'll have to from my understanding, you're gonna have to up our salary base and amend that if you do this.
No, we'll be paying it directly from the county funds, not from.
So you're not gonna put it in, I'm not gonna be paying back.
No,
Okay.
we'll pay it
All
directly.
right. That was I'm just sitting here thinking that's gonna raise an entire salary.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay. One other thing before I ask for a motion, Squire Booth, and this is for you and Squire Moore. You all, this is a piece of what goes on when you all aren't here, but I want you to know how proud I am of Susan Lawrenson and Betty Jo and Tambra and their thoughts through this whole process of trying to make sure to the best we can, and I know it's impossible, but how this will affect every different aspect of somebody's employment. And they've scrutinized every possible way and had an answer for what issues would come up, and they were just fantastic. And as you know, we have one person as a treasurer, one person as a human resource, and one person actually have one person doing two jobs in Tampa. So the staff that work for you are amazing, and they're outstanding. Jeff, I know you can say exactly the same thing. We, all of us in the county government in Lambert, you pride yourself on this, and I agree, and I do too. We're very frugal, but we do one heck of a job of getting the job done with as few staff as we've got. Robert, you're part of that too. But so thank you to everybody. With that being said, we'll need, Tamara, you want a motion in a second to approve the ARPA funding as a whole, or to approve the premium?
The premium pay, as presented in the spreadsheet, how we have taken the subcategories for full-time, part-time, public safety, and non-public safety.
I'll make that motion. Take this to the full board.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Motion seconded. So I'm good. We're good with that. Aye for me. All right. With that being said, I concludes our business unless anybody else has something else. And I don't see anything else. And thank you. I apologize I wasn't here, but Sonny's Barbecue is open and it's going to be a great place to eat. All right. Thank you. Thank you. If it's okay to adjourn, Squire Moore makes the motion. Marty, you second the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All right. We are adjourned. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Bubba.
Bye, Marty.
Can you go there?